candy for breakfast and ice cream for lunch. It's candy for dinner, and I've got a hunch that it's dandy. We run things, don't act like a mob. There's plenty to do, and we've all got a job. You get to be the police chief. You're the first of big red light. All right, you go to the learnatorium and break everything inside. At last, you get to lead my armies all over the map. You clean my room and you wash my clothes while I stay here and nap.
If you were to ask the average Joe or Jolene what the central philosophy of Nickelodeon is, you would probably get some iteration of kids rule. For decades, the channel has marketed itself as a sort of us versus them destination for kids looking for a space that belongs to them, away from the stuffy grown-ups. For kids by kids, they used to say, with shows starring kids from a kid's perspective, often with adults as antagonists, or at least obstacles. As the philosophers disc jockey Jazzy Jeffrey and William Smith once said, parents just don't understand. And I think the Nickelodeon show that most embraced this idea, made the kids rule, grown-ups drool ideology part of its main theme, was the Fairly OddParents. Most Nickelodeon shows that involve children and older authority figures like parents or teachers usually show a complicated but positive relationship between the two. Clarissa Darling may push back against her parents from time to time, but they all come to an understanding by the end. Big Pete Wrigley may shrug off the lessons being taught to him by his shop teacher at first, but then he comes to know his teacher better and eventually embraces things. The young employees of the Bar None Dude Ranch occasionally try something behind the back of their boss, Mr. Ernst, but ultimately have a healthy working relationship. There are only a handful of shows on Nickelodeon that have no positive adult characters. The adults in the Fairly OddParents, including Timmy Turner's parents, his babysitter Vicky, and teacher Mr. Crocker, are seen as uncaring imbeciles or loud bullies, with few redeeming qualities. And few episodes drew that battle line as clearly as the double-sized one we'll be looking at today. First airing on June 10th, 2005, School's Out the Musical is the 19th/20th episode of the Fairly OddParents, the 58th/59th episode overall. Technically a two-parter, but most often presented as an hour-long event, School's Out was written by Steve Marmol and Butch Hartman, with Hartman directing. It's the first day of summer break, and all the kids are going wild, perhaps more than usual, destroying property and committing acts of extreme vandalism. Kids Rule gets burned into front lawns. Most of these children have fairy godparents, but it seems like their wishes are getting juiced up. Bicycles turning into motorcycles, frisbees turning into flying saucers. It gets so bad that the whole town confronts the mayor about it, demanding it be stopped. That's when a man named Flappy Bob walks in and suggests the parents send all their kids to his educational summer camp, the Learnatorium. Or rather, he sings about it. This is a musical episode after all.
Before they skin their knees, before they're black and blue, before they've caught TB, or keep annoying you, before they break their necks, before they break their arms, before they're all but wrecks, before they do more harm.
So all the kids wind up at the Learnatorium, where they're wrapped up in protective material so they don't hurt themselves, and are forced to participate in the most joyless versions of play ever. Now, while such a prison may hold your average child, Timmy has borderline omnipotent beings that are also enablers for best friends, so he wishes not only to get out of this Learnatorium situation, but basically uses the nuclear option. Screw adults. Kids rule the world.
Who gets to set the curfew? Kids! Who gets to make the laws? Kids! There's one adult left we all trust, and his name is Santa Claus! Kids! Who gets to run the country? Kids! Who gets to say what's cool? Kids! How can I put it bluntly? Kids! Now it's kids who rule!
And thus the villain's trap is sprung. It turns out that this was all an evil plot by the Pixies, beings very similar to fairies, but are more business-minded and wish to initiate a corporate takeover of Fairy World. It was the Pixies who were juicing up everyone's summer wishes. It turns out Flappy Bob was a clown baby that the Pixies found 37 years ago during an odd little Superman Origins pastiche, and then they raised him to be a corporate adult, giving him the plans for the Learnatorium. And it was the Pixies who encouraged Timmy to make his kids rule the world wish. Because when kids rule the world, every kid in the world is happy. And when every kid is happy, they don't need fairy godparents anymore. And so all the fairies are forcibly returned to Fairy World, giving the pixies control of all magic, using Flappy Bob as the wish-making vessel for their takeover. By the way, all the pixies are voiced by Ben Stein, which I would normally roll my eyes at, but I can't think of anyone better to play the embodiment of boring idiots who take all the fun out of the world and make it objectively worse. Also, when the pixies sing, they're voiced by Method Man and Redman. It's a funny contrast.
Yes, Sanderson, it seems that as long as there are fairies on Earth, we will never get the upper hand. I can't believe they're making us drive home this time.
We're fairy world, and this world here are ruled by us. By us you hear, by us you hear. We're pixies, we're pixies. Strong like Bill Bixby.
The songs in this musical episode are mostly fine, though there are a lot of them. 11 songs over 47 minutes. The music is credited to Hartman Marmol and the series' main composer, Guy Moon, who's had quite the career, composing for things like the Brady Bunch movies, Johnny Bravo, and Cartoon All-Stars to the Rescue.
If you pound it, let's get high.
Here's a practical reply.
Go ahead, let's fly, spit right in his eye and say no!
The process seems to have been that Hartman and Marmol co-wrote the lyrics as poems first, then handed it over to Moon to turn them into songs. The music here starts strong. Kids just being kids being a decent tween summer jam, and adults ruin everything acting as a theme to the kids rule ethos the show is fully buying into. However, the music starts to lose some steam by the second half, including a love ballad between Cosmo and Wanda that is just kinda awful. It's slow and unmotivated and not very funny, and it turns out Darren Norris and Suzanne Blakesley might not have the strongest singing voices, at least not in character.
Yes, I know he's a moron with a brain made of boron, and yet I'm drawn to him magically.
And no, the fact that the episode tries to lampshade things and say the love song was just a distraction for plot stuff does not excuse the 3 minutes we have to sit through it. Honestly, a lot of this special had me thinking, okay, this isn't bad per se, but why are we doing this story this way? Season 4 was the season for big, Fairly OddParents specials. It was the season of the Jimmy Timmy Power Hour, the first of 3 big crossovers with Jimmy Neutron that would lead into the Nicktoons Unite video game series. It was the season of Channel Chasers, a major 3-part adventure that would shake up the status quo and explore what Timmy's relationship with his fairy godparents would be as he got older, giving the character a canon, if not yet reached, ending. Schools Out has none of that. It doesn't shake up the status quo, add anything new to the mythos, or introduce any new regular characters. It's not an exceptionally complicated plot. In fact, if you cut out the songs, you could probably compress this hour-long episode not just into a full half hour, but a basic 12-minute cartoon. A decent romp stretched very thin. I don't even think this was intended as some kind of summer break holiday special to be aired over and over again in the first weeks of June, like one might do with a Christmas or Halloween episode. While Timmy's summer break is what kicks off the plot, the special isn't about summer. This plot could just as easily have worked for spring break, Christmas break, or even just a long weekend. No, the reason Schools Out exists is because Butch Hartman just wanted to do a musical for the sake of doing a musical, because he thought that would be fun. Ever since I was a kid, I've wanted to do animated songs somehow. It was a little daunting, but we're on such a fast production schedule around here that we really had no choice but to dive in and make it. Then once we got it done, it was like, wow, look at what we did. I think it's really going to move OddParents to a whole new level so people can see how much fun the show can be. And you know what? I can respect that. You have an opportunity to just do what you want, get one of your passion projects made. Why wouldn't you take that up? I think Schools Out the Musical is overlong and really only has 2 good songs, but it's quite possibly the most kids rule thing Nickelodeon ever aired. Maybe not in a way Nickelodeon usually preferred, with kids causing mass destruction and dismissing adult authority altogether. For all of its talk, Nick rarely went this far. But there is something to be said of the power fantasy of being a kid and getting what you want when you want it. Of course, to map how Nickelodeon has used the whole kids rule idea for themselves would require an entire series looking at every single Nickelodeon show. This was just a sample.